So, good morning and welcome everyone. We would like to start sending a big thank you to all of you. We're aware that today is Saturday and it's 10 in the morning, so thank you for being here. We would also like to extend our compliments to Susie Watts for inviting us. We have worked with Susie, as she said, in Riceholm for the same project, Wings to the Past. It was a great experience for all of us. So as soon as we heard that the project was still working, we decided that we wanted to help with anything that is required. So here we are. Before starting and to introduce also ourselves a little bit, my name is Raquel. As Susie said, I'm an archaeologist. As you will probably notice from my accent, I'm not originally from England. I'm from Spain, from Barcelona. I have mostly worked as a field archaeologist in Spain, of course, but I've also done works in Italy and Portugal. And now, well, I'm here working for the post-excavation team at Network Archaeology.
So good morning, everyone. My turn to speak. I'm Diana, and as Raquel, I'm also an archaeologist borrowed from another country. I am Portuguese, and I have been working in archaeology since the last 13 years. I'm currently working at Network Archaeology as a finds manager, and I'm honestly very, very pleased of being part of this experience again today.
So we will be talking about archaeology in the next hour, but as it is a complex science, we decided to center our attention into the most relevant topics. As a result, we will divide the talk into 3 parts. The first part will be get into our attention about 5 specific questions. The second will talk about standing building recording. As Susie told us, you will have some practical experience with it. And the third part will be a quiz composed of 5 questions. Please don't get scared or do not panic. This quiz is just to have some fun. No one will need to show the results or anything.
It's a very simple thing as well.
Yes. And finally, we are aware that this is an online platform, but please, if you have any question, any doubt, or want to intervene, please do it. Drop a question on the chat or just ask. We are here to help you to fall in love with archaeology, or at least we will try it. So starting with the first question is, what is archaeology and how does it work? When we think about archaeology, the general idea or the answer that we usually receive is, oh my God, you work in Jurassic Park, you must be excavating and left your towel exposed and notice how fast it ends up covered with the sun. So more or less, this is what happens with these traces, with these past traces. Our objective as archaeologists consists in unearthing these traces and carefully collecting them in order to study them and interpret their meaning and their significance. These objects and materials leave traces and clues about what happened with them, or what were these objects for, or why they were broken. But most importantly, who left them behind. Why do we need to study that? Why is it important to know what happened 1,000 years ago? Because it explains us the story of who we are and how we are the way we are now. Have you ever thought how we are riding horses and not zebras? Aren't they the same species? Or why do we eat raw fish and instead in Japan they eat, why do we eat cooked fish actually, not raw fish?
We also eat raw
and in
fish.
Japan, yeah. But yeah, all these cultural questions that seem natural and common have their answer in the past. And they are the reason why we think and act the way we do now. From this point, all seems quite clear. But how do we know where to find this information? Where is it? So nowadays we have several methods and technological advanced mechanisms that help us to know where archaeological sites are, such as geophysics, satellite imagery, historical sources, landscape evaluation, or even archaeological predictive modeling. However, Even now, sometimes it is not possible to use this technology. So we need to rely on different methods, such as observing the landscape. Are there any unusual or unnatural shapes in the land, such as mounds? Or is there an uncommon number of artifacts on the surface? Or can we detect any visible structure? And if so, are there any objects found in situ, so in its original place? Before moving on, I am going to tell you a story of Heinrich Schliemann. So nevertheless, and despite of these multiple techniques that I told you about, sometimes luck is also a great help. So this handsome man in the 19th century was an archaeologist and a businessman obsessed to find the legendary city of Troy. As you will probably remember from the film, Troy was the most desired city in the ancient Greece. This splendorous metropolis was impossible to invade as its walls were so tall and strong that no one could pass through, until King Agamemnon, that had the entire Greece under his rule, decided that Troy was going to be the next. So he collected the most brave, intelligent, and strong men from the entire Greece, including Ajax, Achilles, and Patroclus, but also gods and goddesses, such as Athena, the goddess of wisdom, or Hera, the queen of all gods. Amongst the warriors, Odysseus or Ulysses from Ithaca, known for his wisdom, created a plan to invade Troy. He decided to build a giant horse made from timber as a gift for the Trojans. The problem is that the gift was a trap, as inside the horse, Agamemnon's men would be hidden in it. The Trojans, thinking themselves victorious, thought that it was a gift and brought the horse inside the city, without knowing that they have condemned Troy forever. This wonderful tale, known as the Iliad, was written by a Greek author, Homer. The city was believed to be an invention, a creation from the author, as no one ever heard about it. However, Schliemann was committed to find the city. He used some of the towns, some of the real names found in the book, and decided to start an excavation in the present Turkey, where the two red stars are in both maps. The extraordinary about this story is that Schliemann found Troy, or at least a settlement that matched in with the Troy described in the story. But this is not over. Schliemann not only found and discovered Troy, but also the tomb of a king, King Priam, the king of Troy. But again, this is not over, as he also found what we thought to be the tomb of Agamemnon. Do you remember the king that conquered Troy? This man found three of the most important archaeological sites in ancient Greece. And I am so jealous about that. I have been digging in so many sites and I have never found anything as close as that and as spectacular as that.
And I don't think we will ever will.
I know, it's so sad, but we like archaeology. It's not a treasure. But continuing with our journey, Diane and I decided that instead of explaining step by step how we dig and the methods that we use to excavate an archaeological site, and probably becoming a very boring talk
for a Saturday.
Yes, in the morning, even worse. So we thought to travel a little bit and visit some archaeological sites that use different methods, because the way we dig or the strategies that we use vary depending on the type of archaeological site. But before that, we will need to get ready and pack some of the tools that any archaeologist need, such as trowel, boots, camera, notebook, shovel, mattock, tape, hoe, brush, and pencil case. So with all the necessary records on site, I think that we are ready to go. So our first stop will be all the way to China. specifically to the region of Xi'an, where we will explore a fascinating site that you probably all know. So in 1974, a group of farmers started to drill the soil in order to build a well. During the excavation, it was discovered a subterranean chamber that contained one of the major discoveries of the world: 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers. Once the archaeologists arrived to the site, they discovered that the army of soldiers were accompanying or protecting someone very powerful, the first emperor of China, King Shi Huang. The mausoleum, so a standing building where someone is buried, also preserved horses, exotic animals, chariots, and precious stones. But how did they dig this gigantic burial? This archaeological site is still under excavation. They have not finished yet, and I think
I
they
don't
have
know when they will be
actually
finishing it.
quite a long time to keep going. The way the mausoleum was built preserved almost intact some of the figures. Some were even still standing. However, what about the ones that were broken? How do they know which part connects to the other? As you can see on the image, archaeologists tries to follow the soil and continue unearthing the types of soil based on the finds that they are encountering. As the sand that covers a towel, when time passes, also changes the type of soil. So archaeologists read through them and understand which one comes first. This burial is a unique example, but you can also find other cases completely different, such as inside a big vessel, within a tree trunk, found in a cremation pit, and as part of a mass grave. Although different, all these cases will need to follow the same methodology. They will need to be excavated from the earliest to the oldest. Our second stop will be in two different destinations, Spain and Britain, as the methodology applied in these two sites is quite similar. So our first start, that you again probably know about it, is the Star Cup, which is an exceptionally rare site first identified by John Moore in 1947 and partially excavated by Sir Graham Clark in 1949-1951. It has been positively dated to the early Mesolithic, so around 10,000 years ago, and has also shown evidence of built structures. Starkar is exceptional for its great diversity of finds, archaeological features, and evidence that demonstrate the use of stone tools for carpentry, but also because it has the evidence of permanent occupation, an idea that was thought to have occurred later in time. This site also preserved a fantastic plenty of evidence that allowed to reconstruct the landscape during the early Mesolithic. Another particular characteristic is that it shows clearly reoccupation along the years, and this is not a very common feature within this specific period. So our next stop will be at the north center of Spain, near a location called Burgos. In 1895, a British company started the construction of a train line that tried to integrate two cities to transport iron and coal between them. The construction was directed by Richard Priest, who decided to move the original train line to go through an area called Atapuerca. The works ended in bankruptcy, and the initial idea of building the train line was changed into a quarry. As a result of these multiple works, the soil started to uncover peculiar objects that ended up being human and animal remains. The site has a very complex stratigraphical sequence, as you can see on the above images. The works here started years ago and have not yet finished, not even close, as the process of excavation is very slow. We're talking about the first humans who lived here around 1.2, 1.4 million years ago. So why did I show you these two sites? Because of the method that they use. When we travel farther in time, so when we go deeper into the soil, the difference between layers become diffuse. And it is very difficult to understand when a deposit ends and a new starts. Both examples show how sites like that are excavated. They use a technique called grid system that consists in creating a grid with a squares of 1 by 1 meter and excavating artificial spits or artificial layers of 1.2 to 5 centimeters. All the soils from there will be sieved, and if any artifacts are found, will be easily identified from which specific square and spit or artificial layer, as I said, belong. For example, in a star car, through this method, it was possible to identify that the houses were kept cleaner than the surrounding areas. So our third stop will be again in Britain. In 1999, a group of divers went to the Isle of Wight to investigate the area as a part of a Hampshire and Wight Trust for Maritime Archaeology, the now known as Maritime Archaeology Trust. While diving, they spotted how a lobster was chucking work flame from its burrow. So thanks to a lobster, archaeologists have discovered a new site, a prehistoric settlement. Archaeologists investigated and have since found some amazing artifacts, like the oldest piece of string and evidence of wheat, previously not thought to have arrived in Britain for another 2,000 years. At 8,000 years old, it's the only Mesolithic village from this new submerged area that we currently know of. The site was located 11 meters underwater. The reason why it was found there is because at the time when humans were living there, the sea levels were at least 12 meters lower than they are now. So humans would be able to walk from France to Britain. This site shows a very different technique. It's the subaquatic archaeology. The reality is that the methodology will be exactly the same, excavating from the earliest to the oldest, with the difference in this case that everything needs to be waterproof.
And now it's my turn again, and I'll leave Raquel to rest a bit. And I will come to you to ask and to tell you, what do archaeologists find? And the most common question that we get is usually, have you ever found a treasure, or have you ever found gold? Dinosaurs, yes. About dinosaurs, we already know that it's not our field. And about gold and treasures, they're not that common as well, and they are very difficult to find, but sometimes they appear. We have some cool examples from the UK, such as the famous Anglo-Saxon Staffordshire hoard, with over 4,600 and something objects and fragments of metal. And on the background of this image, you can also see some coins that were found in a great hoard of Iron Age coins found that we can market in Norwich. But like I said, the finds like that are very rare. And the answer to the question to what archaeologists find are traces and things that were made and used by people in the past. And through the excavation and by sampling the soils, we get remains of structures, such as the one in the image behind of a Neolithic settlement in Scotland. We find tools, we find food, we find pieces of clothes, we find animal remains, plant remains, and everything that was related to those old landscapes. But we also find elements that makes us a bit closer to our ancestors' culture and beliefs, such as art and religious tokens. But again, depending on where we are geographically and the chronology of the archaeological sites, we can find very different features and objects made of very, very different materials. So in a trip through time, during the early prehistory or the Stone Age, Paleolithic and Mesolithic, it's two massive periods. The objects and materials we find are mainly related to man's hunter-gatherer background. The main tools we recover are made of stone or bone, but sometimes we are lucky enough to find wooden objects as well. We have hand axes, as you can see on the left corner of the, on the right corner of the screen, and these type of objects could be used to cut, to smash, to sometimes to carve other objects as well. And in Mesolithic, we have something very common, which is the smaller blades called microliths. And these microliths were used to be placed in shafts, and they could be used to hunt, to fish, or to simply to be used as knives or tools to cut other elements. A bit later in time, and in what we call the Neolithic or the new stone, something new arrives, and that is the pottery, and it makes a big difference for these communities. Neolithic is the moment in history when humans start settling and abandoning nomadism. So this settlement allowed humans to explore certain materials and dedicate more time to agriculture and husbandry and other crafts and new crafts like pottery. It's a period of our history that we call agricultural revolution or Neolithic revolution. And this was the dawn for many of ancient civilizations like the Egyptian civilization. Many domesticated animals such as cattle and sheep become more and more common, and their remains are commonly found in archaeological sites. After the Neolithic, in the period that we call the Chalcolithic or the Bronze Age, there is an introduction of a new material, again, a new thing to mark the difference. And it was metal, in this case, copper. It is the first time that societies handle metal and learn how to mix it with other metals to make harder and sturdier objects. There are great metal finds from this period, but we also find massive, wooden boats, and there's a widespread of pots in this period called beakers, as you can see on the left side, now on the left side of the slide. These pots are found through all Europe, from Russia until Iberia and from the UK until Romania. And there are the evidence how humans moved, migrated, and transferred and exchanged technological knowledge and culture throughout this period all along Europe. It is a great period for human, evolution, let's call it. With time, and again, with the continuous evolution of societies and technology, came the iron, which gave its name to the Iron Age, very precisely. The ironwork led as well to the invention of many other tools, allowing its use in other important activities such as agriculture, of course, and construction. In the case of the UK, Iron Age was a time of very strong cultural identity. It was when for example, the pottery started being made not only by hand, but also on a wheel, or when the first coins start circulating in the UK because of commercial contacts with overseas. And as you can assume, the circulation and presence of coins and money and currency changed all the economic panorama until our days. And as we will know, or assume, the Iron Age Britons were very well and happy until the Romans decide to expand their empire, invading Britain and integrating the non-resistant communities in their system. We are not going to say what happened to the ones that resisted, but you can guess. When archaeologists usually dig Roman sites, the most common finds are pottery. There are always considerable quantities of ceramic vessels. The pottery production in Roman times was a bit like IKEA. If a model works, let's make thousands of the same type, or millions, and use it. Although there were different types of wares, and ones were used by richer people, others by poorer people. And this distribution of different types of pottery and other materials, of course, as well, allow us to understand the type of settlements that we are dealing with. If we are, for example, dealing with a modest small farm or with a highly rich farmstead complex. And during the investigation on Roman sites, and when the gods allow, or when it's more when a metal detector is available, we can find as well lovely objects, lovely metal objects and other objects like brooches and toilet sets, and of course coins like the one depicted that states the Britain, that one of the first mints of done in Britain. Again, as the time passes and the Roman Empire declines, new people from the north and from the Central Europe decide to make a living in these islands. The Saxons arrive and start transforming the cultural system and the administrative system as well in such a way that some of it and some of the administrative divisions that we have nowadays are still present since that time. But you will always know, you also know that there are other Norse people that targeted Britain, and they are the very famous Vikings. From this period, there are great finds known in the UK. There are settlements and cemeteries, and thousands of objects are found every year. In the images, you can see, for example, of their daily objects to produce textiles, or the combs, the lovely bone combs, pardon, that they would use for their hairs and for their famous beards as well. From medieval times until the most recent days, there was a great increment of population, apart from when the Black Death or the plague took over 1/3 of the British population. For example, it's quite common that in London that a plague pit with the remains of the deceased appears during construction works. But this was also the time of market towns and queens and kings and peasants and religious orders and plenty of social convulsion. There was plenty of human activity in this time. And because of that, there's also a great development in arts, in science, in technological evolution. And one of the good things is that many buildings still survive today, like this pretty example from Lincoln, where we live. So, to place the last question, we'd like to explain how do archaeologists interpret sites. We all agree that it is absolutely fantastic and great to find nice and ancient objects, but these pieces will not mean much if they don't have a context. So archaeology is a destructive action, and once we dig something, we are destroying the history and those soils and layers preserved for so long. The only way of keeping the track of what we are extracting from the ground is by recording everything we are doing through drawing, through sampling, photography, and of course, proper written records of it all. This way, when we record everything and when the excavation is over and we are finally sitting in a warm room with a nice cup of tea, we will be able to put all the pieces together and understand more about the site we investigate. In this stage, we can study all the artifacts and provide them with some meaning. All the layers and the soils and features recorded on site are going as well to be analyzed, related, and understood as a whole. Based on that, we identify different chronology patterns, behavior, and construction techniques that will help us understand the cultural and technological evolution of our ancestors. I'll pass the word to Raquel again.
It's my turn. So lastly, we would like to talk about an important matter that all of you will be involved during this project, which is a standing building recording. As we have been explaining and seeing during this presentation, we have focused on different aspects related to archaeology. The first impressions that we have from there now right now, not about the dinosaurs, but now, is that they relate to excavate, to dig, to remove different soils, and to get dirty, but mainly to go deeper in the ground. So where does it stand the standing building recording? Is it considered archaeology or is it not? So standing building recording is a very specific and a specialized aspect within archaeology. The main purpose is to understand how a structure, a standing building, was built. Do you remember when we talk about stratigraphy and how the deepest is usually the oldest? So in architecture or a standing building is usually the same. We will start placing a base to later the walls and roof. So the base will be the oldest part within the building. But as you know, building is an alive feature and will be remodeled, reconstruct, add an extension, or place a new wall. So when recording a standing building, we will use the same principles as the stratigraphy, but we will call it a different name, phasing. This way, we will try to understand how that building was made. So we will ask questions about which part was the first structure, or does it have a new wall, or is this wall placed beneath, over, through, or in between another wall? Once we know how they relate to each other, you can pick the history and the development of the structure. As a matter of fact, this is something that you can even do in your own house if you see the different way the walls relate to each other. The level of recording you will be doing depend on the specifications provided by the archaeological or heritage officer, but it always needs to follow the Historic England guidelines, which specify 4 levels of recording. They range from level 1, comprising photograph and a brief description notes, to level 4, containing a full historical and architectural analysis, supported by a comprehensive drawing and photographic records. Independently of the strategy that you will apply, research about the building is mandatory, as well as a detailed examination of its characteristics. Recording the main features and dimensions of certain architectural elements might be crucial to understanding the phasing of construction or changes in the architectural style. Recording building is a complex but an interesting process. The advised and best strategy is working side by side with experienced people and following the Historic England guidance. But obviously, the practice will be the best advice I can tell you.
Yeah. So we are getting to the end,
Quiz.
and we will, like we said in the beginning, we will just place 5 questions that you will be able to answer at home, and then we will give you the answers at the end, so you can just see if you got everything that we talked about. We will start with the first one now, and we'll give you more or less 20 seconds. It will be enough to,
or just
20, 30 seconds.
Yeah,
yeah. Or you can just let us know that you're done,
and we will pass
yeah.
to the next one. So, what do archaeologists study? A, the plants in the past. B, the human societies in the past. C, the animals in the past. D, all answers are correct.
You can see everybody's brains working, can't you?
What do we study?
There's probably some clues on the background.
Yes, there are plenty of clues in the background. I think we can pass to the next one, if it's okay. The second question will be, which tools would an archaeologist use? So, option number option A is screwdriver, B, handsaw, C, trowel, D, chisel. Which tools would an archaeologist use on site? Screwdriver, handsaw, trowel, or chisel? Good to go. We can return to the questions if there's any.
Okay, next one. Which material were the Stone Age humans making tools or weapons from? A, iron, B, ceramic, C, stone, D, plastic. There's some clues.
There's some clues on the
Okay. For everything everyone's reading.
yes.
Okay, I will go for the next one.
So the next one is the fourth question, and we want to know which site did the famous archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann discovered in 1870? Option A, the mausoleum of Emperor Queen. I'm sorry. Queen. B, Troy. C, Starkar. D, Atapuerca. So which site did Heinrich Schliemann discovered in 1870?
Okay, and we are going for the last question.
The final question.
How many soldiers composed the terracotta army? A, 8, B, 80, C, 800, D, 8,000. Are you all ready to see the answers? Or do you need more time, or do you want us to go back to some questions?
Shout out anybody if anybody does want to go for any questions again. Sounds like we're all good.
Yes,
Oh, perfect.
perfect.
So the answers are, what do archaeologists study? All answers are correct because we study it all. We study everything that is related to the
Humans.
past and human activity, and humans, animals, and plants are connected in a way that they can't be teared apart. They can't be disconnected of it. So all the answers need to be correct in that case.
Within archaeology, you will find that you have different specializations. So you will have the general archaeology that relates all of that, humans, plants, and animals. And then you can get specialized into zoo archaeology, so studying just the animals, or
environmental archaeology and do landscape reconstructions.
But
Archaeology contain it all.
Yeah. The next one is, which tools would an archaeologist use? Of course, we use a trowel.
Well, it would be funny to dig with a screwdriver. And the third question, which material were the Stone Age humans making tools or weapons from? It is, of course, stone, and the preferred stone for these people was flint, and flint could be extracted from chalk quarries and having big nodules of flint just all nuts, or, for example, beach pebbles, that they are sort of flint as well, and they would just nut their tools and other objects out of there.
So the fourth question is, which site did the famous archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann discover in 1870? And the answer is B, Troy. And I really hope you did that one correct.
If you were. And the last question is, how many soldiers composed the terracotta army? And the correct answer is D, and it's 8,000, well, soldiers or
made all
Figures.
out from terracotta. It's
Yeah,
just-
made of terracotta. It's a lot. It's a lot of soldiers, and we hope that we got everything correct.
Okay. So I mean, thank you.
And
I
we
hope
all,
that it
Wow.
wasn't too boring.